we're lucky that that bridge did not collapse into the Seekonk River.
That report shows there's a lot of blame to go around.
Now they're trying to placate people with signage that say, thanks for your patience as we build a new bridge. We're on time, on budget at $427 million.
There's no way you're going to do it. People that are stuck every single day in that traffic will remember.
And I'm Jim Hummel. Thanks for joining us on This Lively, joined this week by Bill Bartholomew, host of the Bartholomewtown podcast, attorney and former mayor of Cranston, Allan Fung. The Washington Bridge is back in the news this week as a 64-page forensic audit commissioned by the governor last year puts a lot of blame for the westbound side failure on the state. Bill, let me begin with you. This was a big bombshell. A lot of reporters have been trying to get a hold of this for a year, and it finally came out.
Right. It's one of those documents that people knew existed, at least at some level. And look, there's not a lot of surprises in there if you've been following the travel of this case in terms of documentation, stories from on the ground. It always amazed me that the tactic from day one wasn't similar to what we're seeing today from the governor, or really yesterday, when he released a letter sent to Shekarchi and Lawson, Speaker of the House and Senate President, saying, yeah, let's get an oversight committee hearing. Let's do something about this, because it was pretty clear from Jump Street that, at least at some level, the state had some complicity in what had happened. This draft report, this audit that was released, only verifies that, at least in draft format. That's their argument anyway.
No, absolutely. When you read that report, and especially that closing sentence where, in the conclusion part, it's saying, look, this has been going on for not years, decades. People have been known. There's been failures up and down the chain, but most importantly, the state leaders, those officials at DOT, and this is why everyone's sitting there on, how is Mr. Alviti still there? Because he's been a big chunk of it. They're not prioritizing. They're not looking at the data, at the analysis, showing that maybe it's not a failure then, but if you don't prioritize and maintain your infrastructure, this is what's going to happen. And we're talking about it's fresh in the press now, but it's still on the minds of all of those people who have to commute over that Washington Bridge in East Bay. Yep, I see you raising your hands, but everyone. I dread going, when I have to go see a client on the East Bay. It's unbelievable the delays you have to go through.
Yeah, I do it every day, sometimes twice a day, and it's unpleasant. Now they're trying to placate people with signage that say, thanks for your patience as we build a new bridge. And then they have this sign up, one of those that, they tell you, well, we're on time, on budget at $427 million.
November of 2028,
and
right?
That's been the tactic that has probably been most frustrating, is to say, okay, well, the bridge almost fell into the river, but great news, everybody. We're going to have a brand new Washington Bridge. And so it's just been an inconsistent and extremely poorly managed communications effort on this thing from day one. And you're right. The idea that Peter Alviti is still the director of the Department of Transportation it shows how Rhode Island government works. We could get into that later, but also it shows just a lack of dedication to taking a direction on resolving this problem.
Yeah, you're right. It's messaging. The more that, whether it's the governor's office, DOT is putting out there. I still remember sitting on this show probably a couple years ago when they said, oh, we'll get this done by X. I'm like, wait a minute. I represent a lot of construction. There's no way you're going to do it. And we're seeing that. And now they're trying to, put a different message out there through this science, but people that are stuck every single day in that traffic will remember, and we'll see how much of an impact it's going to play next year in that gubernatorial election.
Let me ask you from an attorney's perspective. Now, and I've been talking to some of the defendants, the state sued 13 companies, and that's the reason why everybody's clammed up. Oh, we can't talk about it because of the lawsuit. And they're talking about that with the oversight hearings, that they might not be able to talk about that. We'll get to that momentarily. From an attorney's perspective, they did not have this report before they made motions to dismiss. They've done it twice, and the governor said, oh, they've had this all along. It's been part of the discovery process. Does that change the tenor of the lawsuit? Do you think they're going to go in for another bite at the apple with Judge Stern?
I think what you're going to see is probably more intense discussions now behind the scenes to see, let's see if we can resolve this and have this all go away, because that report shows there's a lot of blame to go around, from the inspectors to, from outside inspectors, DOT, so there's a lot of finger pointing that's going to go around. I have a feeling that there's going to probably be a lot of discussions about ponying up to dollars.
So write a check and move on?
And move on. That's probably what's going to happen. There could be some more drama in court as discoveries going around, but my bet is there's probably some serious settlement that's going to be facilitated one way or the other.
I mean, look, the whole process here has been sometimes well explained, sometimes not well explained by the communications people on the governor's side or on the DOT side. But look, if you fire Alviti, if you do something that is just a public sacrifice, as you well know, you jeopardize the percentage of culpability that the state has versus those 13 contractors, potentially eliminating or significantly reducing what could be recovered in court. And that's been their argument all along. Well, you can't fire Alviti because if you do that, now the state has, the appearance of or actual liability. But what you could have fired Alviti for right away or said, hey, maybe it's time to retire, is just the communications stuff, which going back to that, I think that's such a big deal. The way that he came out and freelanced on dates. Well, we might have this date of, we think we're going to have the bridge open by whatever it was, March of 2026. And constantly shifting the entire rubric. And it just showed a lack of command. These are the moments where leaders are tested and where true leadership, which includes saying, you know what? Yeah, we backed into this thing. This thing has gone all the way back to Roger Williams, as I've been saying before. Maybe it goes that far back. But here, starting tonight, is how we're going to manage it. And instead, we've got a lot of excuses and, well, really not our fault, we'll let you know later type of stuff. And Rhode Islanders just, they will not accept that as a policy.
No, and like we were saying earlier before, the true test will be coming up in the next election to see how much that, especially the people on that side of the bay, are going to remember and vote, because of not just inconvenience, the frustration that they go through daily, going across that bridge.
It's interesting in that West January report. I did a story for today's journal, the Hummel report. We published it. We're taping on a Thursday. That the Carty Corporation is virtually not mentioned at all. It's like the state wants to just say. Now, remember, Carty did some original repairs, and then in your when you were running against Gina Raimondo, big political fallout because there
Gina Jam.
You called it Gina Jam. That was your phrase, because the traffic, they were working on it. It backed up to Massachusetts. They wound up terminating the contract. I did a story today that said Carty offered the DOT all these things. That said, can we waterproof? Can we change the scuppers? And DOT said, no. We want to get this back as quickly as we can. And again, it's hindsight, but 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 16 years ago, if they'd done certain things, you wonder, would we be in the shape we are now?
Impossible to know, and I certainly am not an engineer, but when you speak with engineers and whether structural engineers or other people in that orbit, locally and on a national basis about this project, the answer is, from their standpoint, a definitive, we would not be in this position had we maintained this infrastructure. And of course, it raises the question that's a reasonable one of, well, what else is out there? Are we going to find out that there's another piece of infrastructure, not necessarily a bridge, that has suffered the same type of fate where, well, we've kind of maintained it, but not necessarily up to standard, and surprise, now thousands of people's daily commutes are going to be disrupted. And by the way, let's also not forget that this was an incredibly irresponsible situation. We're lucky that that bridge did not collapse into the Seekonk River, period.
And if you remember, President Biden was on that bridge going to Somerset that summer. He went over, he flew in for some quick energy thing out in Somerset and went over 195. And I thought, can you imagine if that bridge collapsed? I mean, Peter Alviti would be at Guantanamo Bay right now if that, we've lost the president of the United States into the Seekonk River.
But just think about something. We were talking about back then with Carty Corp. Who was the person in charge making those decisions? The same individual we've, mentioned many times, Mr. Alviti.
Yeah.
How long are we going to be subjected to exactly what you're talking about? The messaging that he's put out there on behalf of DOT, sometimes on a weekly basis when he was doing those talk radio shows, to even now today. He's kind of quieted down significantly, but it's transcended several administrations. We're talking about Governor McKee now, but that was Governor Raimondo and her Gina jam that happened. So this has been going on, and could those actions have saved to the point where we're not in a disastrous situation, especially with not just inconvenience, mere, total traffic backups that on a daily basis.
All right, I think we will keep an eye. The next thing to keep an eye on is going to be those contractors and if they do another motion to dismiss. Allan and Bill, thanks for coming in. It's great to see both of you guys again.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Lively right here on Ocean State Media. Subscribe to us on YouTube and tell us what you think in the comments section below the video.